How can this be the behaviour of a leading promoter?
Can I see it happening September the 23rd? If I'm totally honest, I'm not sure I can.
Why are you guys talking about this fight? Why don't you get Conor cleared? Welcome to Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. Spencer adorned in his best Primark gear for the summer. This is episode 30. We've managed to get rid of Pat, so we can look forward to a very fruitful episode. And don't forget to, of course, keep liking, subscribing and watching all the videos and leaving questions in the comment section below. But let's get on with the show, Spence. We've seen the spectre of a fight that I'm not hugely enamoured with raising its head again. Which is the Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn fight. We've seen Matchroom and specifically eddiehearn doing a number of things, talking about the interview that happened last week with Chris Eubank Sr.
Yep.
But also talking specifically and explicitly about the nature of a Eubank Jr. Conor Benn fight being all but agreed, and all that really needed to be determined was the location preference being in the UK. Backstop probably being in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. When I say I don't want the fight, I never wanted to fight in the first place before all the furore broke out and all the brouhaha has broken out about Conor's situation. I didn't like the fight because I didn't think it was the right fight. Stepping up and down weight classes and making a fight happen at a certain stage in people's career didn't feel right for me, specifically Conor Benn. Yep. Obviously, there's an irony about the fact that's changed the dynamic slightly. What do you make to this poking of one's head above the parapet from Matchroom, talking about making a fight, not seeming to acknowledge the challenges that are there, not seeming to ignore the ramifications that might be there for people like Chris Eubank Jr. if they go and have these sorts of fights, if Conor is not cleared, not able to fight in the UK?
Well, listen, where we're at right now is Conor is on suspension, so no fight should be talked about until he's cleared up this situation with UK. That's where I'm at with it. It's quite frustrating, really, because I think it brings a disrespect and a care and duty to the sport of boxing. I think that you shouldn't be talked about. I think, this has become so high profile that I think they need to deal with this situation with UCAD before you're talking about September the 23rd out in the Middle East if they haven't moved on any further with UCAD in this situation. And how can that fight go ahead with the guy currently under suspension? I mean, where does that put in all the team around Conor Benn, the people that are working alongside him? Because surely they will become under the spotlight as well if they don't resolve this situation. I mean,
you've been around this industry. I've paid a lot of attention to it over the years, more from a spectator point of view. Pay more attention to it now from an understanding point of view, irrespective of little twits in Matchroom that allude to something different about my understanding of certain things. What do you think is the objective, besides money, from Matchroom to be making these observations at a time when Conor Benn has still got to deal with the issue, because we still don't understand what the case can be to get him past strict liability.
Yeah,
there's going to be some seismic change in the policies of UCAD, or some wonderful finding that no one else has ever spoken about, and certainly not the WBC.
Yeah,
that's going to get Conor from underneath. Again, despite Conor's snarling and sneering and irritation, there's nobody in this room and nobody on talkSPORT and nobody that really talks about boxing that wants Conor Benn to be in this position. What people want Conor Benn to do is to be accountable for what's happened and to accept the consequences of it, or absolutely, unequivocally exonerate himself.
Yeah, you just said it there, Simon. What people want to do, and we've seen it in the past with other fighters, we just want him to be accountable for what's happened, accept the consequences, move on, and, serve your time and move on, But by pointing the finger at everybody else, that was the wrong way to play it anyway. The advice that he's been taken all the way through this, I think, has been wrong. I think he's been taking the wrong advice.
He wasted 6 months, didn't he?
He wasted 6 months, and then it went quiet for a couple of months, and all of a sudden now, eddiehearn pops up and says, September the 23rd is the date, if we don't move on with UCAD, we'll go out to the Middle East. You can't do that. I mean, we're talking about a sport where people get injured and killed.
But why would Matchroom, again, because it's Matchroom, we have to talk about Matchroom. If we are talking about Matchroom, it's not because I have a particular preference for Frank Warren or a preference for Ben Shalom. It's because Matchroom have placed themselves front and centre.
Yeah.
They had a lot of observations to make about the interview that was done with Chris Eubank Sr. last week. And they're now advocating for a fight that if it can't get licensed in the UK, they will find a way to get it put in the Middle East, which will drag Chris Eubank Sr. into bringing himself into disrepute. It'll probably get him the British Boxing Board of Control license removed. It'll get fighters that spar with Conor Benn, if they're British Boxing Board of Control licensed fighters and trainers, with themselves in a difficult situation. How can anybody say that this is how a blue chip promoter should be operating? I know that there's a lot of noise in boxing, and I listen to a lot of the YouTube interviews, and no one ever pushes back on the answer because all they're interested in getting Eddie in front of the camera because he's good value for it, right? Or that other idiot that works with him, right? That has nothing to say besides derogatory observations about other people. But the point is how can this be? You've been around this sport for years. How can this be the behaviour of a leading promoter?
Listen, honestly, it baffles me. It really does, because it's put a dark cloud over the sport. This whole situation, from the beginning to the end, has put a dark cloud over the sport because it's gone outside of your boxing fans. This was massive news. This was huge news, and your very casual fans even heard about this. And all it does is puts a big stain over boxing, because you go all of a sudden they say, "What is the situation?" We're like, "Oh well, let's pretend it never happened, and we just talk about new dates and new venues and et cetera, et cetera." I mean, look, Liam Smith versus Eubank was meant to be on. It's been an on-off thing. Liam Smith's, injury is taking longer.
But that's a signed for fight, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's signed and agreed and contractually obligated. And the only way someone's getting out of that fight is if someone pays them to step away.
Absolutely. Right? I'm hearing that's a decisive... I've spoke to Ben Shalom. He tells me that it's a decisive... They've got a date in place.
It's definite.
It's a definite date. So they've got a date in place. And, now they're talking about this Eubank Ben situation. And honestly, I can't get my head around it, because I just think, look, as one of the world's leading promoters, surely you've got to be seen to do the right thing and say, right, this kid has failed 2 separate tests. Let him clear his name, then we can talk about these fights. Let him clear his name, serve his time, then you can talk about them fights. That's fine. It's happened before. Fighters have done it before, and they've served their time, they've come back, and they've continued, and that's the way it should be. But I just think this whole thing's a mess. And now talking about it like it's never happened, because that's what's happening. They're talking about it like this situation has never happened. They're saying, well, September the 21st is the date. I mean, that's crazy.
Can I just pick up on... We touched upon it lightly last week in our show, because it was directly after the interview with Chris Eubank Sr. And we discussed it, and we discussed the way Chris Eubank Sr. spoke, and none of us were particularly comfortable with the fact he was going after his son in the public domain. But post our show last week, and post the reaction to Chris Eubank, post the show that myself and Jim did, and post the Talk Boxing podcast that we did, videos that we did, has become a reaction from certain segments of the media, and again, it's Matchroom that are making the noise and suggesting that Eubank Sr. was manipulated and put in a situation that he shouldn't have been in, and that the broadcaster is irresponsible. Specifically, myself was uncomfortable with what Eubank and all of these misrepresentations that Matchroom put out there. First and foremost, Chris Eubank Sr. to me seemed to be, whilst a man troubled by the grief of losing a son and the potential angst of not having a relationship with another, I didn't get the impression that Chris Eubank Sr. was unhinged or deranged or someone that was being manipulated by us to give an answer for the benefit of a seal-clapping audience that was waiting for him to be fed to the lions.
Chris Eubank Sr. is a very educated man, and people have been talking about his mental health, what state of mind he's in, where he is at the moment. Well, I come in, I was watching that show, as you know. I come in between the breaks. I was speaking to Chris, had a good chat with him afterwards, and he seemed, in a good place. He explained, why certain situations, and he's been talking out and speaking about certain situations, and the situation with Chris Eubank Jr., and how he's uncomfortable with the way that Chris has dealt with him, vice versa, which was all on the show. On the show, but I just think that he wasn't manipulated, Chris, into doing what... Chris wanted to go on that show. Chris wanted to come on the show, and he wanted to speak his mind, and he wanted to have, why is it that, because Chris wants to do something, as soon as Chris Eubank Sr. is involved, people go, whoa, that's out of order. Yeah. You shouldn't do that. It's nothing to... Why are you manipulating him?
But the noise that's swelling around about the interview, and the more I watch this sport and the more I spend time watching it, the more... I mean, I was in football. I thought that was a disingenuous industry with a bunch of blowhards that didn't make a lot of sense and misrepresented and blatantly lied and and baited and switched. But I've never seen anything like this. You've got people like the kid at Matchroom who works for Eddie Hearn, Frank Smith, wandering around telling people that I turned around and said that the interview was uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable with the interview. Didn't say anything of the sort.
Yeah.
Said that I was uncomfortable that he was speaking about his son, not uncomfortable with the interview.
Yeah.
And then we talk about the nature of the reasons why Chris Eubank was there. Now we've got this situation here, which is why I'm bringing the Eubank Sr. in to interview it. Maybe this is what Chris Eubank Sr. is talking about.
Yeah.
Maybe the concerns that he has for the well-being of his son is what he's talking about, because
this is where it all unravelled. This is where it all started, and this is a fact. And I've spoke to Chris about this. I went up to do an interview with him, a long interview, straight after this situation occurred. And Chris was very uncomfortable with getting him down to getting Junior down to 157. He was worried. He thought it was life-threatening, which it was, by the way. We saw him at 160 versus Liam Smith. He looked fragile. His punch resistance wasn't there, and that was because he was tight at the weight. So 157 was potentially harmful, potentially life-threatening. Chris Sr. recognised that, and with the loss of his other son and everything else, and all the build-up of this going on, and everybody ignoring the fact that Senior said, I rang Nigel Benn and pleaded with him, and I would have paid the penalty for him to come in at 160, not 157, because it was life-threatening to my son. I'd already just lost one son. And you can understand that all of this and all of the build-up with Senior was going to tip him over the edge. And that was the beginning of Chris Eubank Sr. struggling with his mental health and whatnot. And then with the build-up of this and everyone choosing to ignore him, people that have been close to him and around him for years and years, just choosing to put it on the back burner and just leaving him alone. I thought it was wrong. It was all terrible. I thought it was dealt with terribly.
But by you making that point, that will move into the territory that Matchroom are making into. That this man is mentally susceptible to the wrong kind of exposure, and he would say the wrong kind of things. And I'm not in that space, not because I don't want to be. I'm not like these guys. Yeah. I don't need clicks. I don't need. We've got an audience of 1.1 million people watching the show. I don't need clicks. Also, I'm not the one that phoned up and asked to have Eddie Hearn do a show with me on DAZN because they wanted that. So the irony of it being said, it shouldn't be lost.
They're making them observations about Chris Eubank Sr. not being well and shouldn't being interviewed. The reason he's not, they're saying he's not well.
This is the point I'm making.
Because of the situation that was happening with Junior and being allowed to happen.
But what they're doing, and the reasons why I'm labouring this point, and it's not because I want to have a go at Matchroom, is they're misrepresenting the situation. They're baiting and switching. Don't look here, look over there. When Hearn came in the studio and talked to me about a variety of things, don't look over here, you went bankrupt. Well, hang on, we're talking about me. We're talking about the reality of a contract that you had with Conor Benn. Why didn't you pull him out of a fight? Why didn't you pull someone out of a fight? Why did you carry on with it? Calla, why did you carry on getting medical advice to suggest to Chris Eubank that his fighter could fight somebody that had drugs in their system? Why did you carry on with that advice? And now why are you guys talking about this fight? Why don't you get Conor cleared? Get him cleared and then talk about this fight all day. Why didn't you deal with him properly? Why didn't you stop him from running around causing mischief and mayhem and no good value to himself or anybody for 6 months? Waste 6 months of this kid's life. Yeah. It doesn't start the clock until March the 15th.
Yeah.
And now we've got you creating this sentiment again. And to me, the reason why I'm discussing it is because I can't understand why people aren't bringing this up and saying this is wrong. I can't understand why Matchroom wouldn't be being sanctioned for this sort of behaviour, which is basically a fighter. By the way, can you see Conor in any? Can you see him getting out from this situation?
How?
Well, this is the point I'm keeping.
How? Like you say, you're responsible for what you put in your body, right? There's 2 failed tests. This is the point that's pissing me off a little bit about it all. It's like, it's like, oh, well, let's hear, his side of things and let's see, let him prove his innocence. You can't, mate. It's done. It's done. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like it is what it is. I think the whole situation's a complete mess. I think he should just serve his time, try and rebuild, come back. But this whole situation is,
but I tell you what,
is a total mess.
But I tell you what could kill this and kill it quickly. Is if Chris Eubank Jr. put out a statement saying, I'm not getting involved in this fight.
Yeah.
Because then that would kill it.
Yeah.
And that's what I fear that won't happen. Because until Conor Benn clears himself or serves the ban, if that's what he gets, Chris Eubank's name shouldn't be anywhere near this.
Yeah.
Chris Eubank Sr.'s advice to Chris Eubank Jr. and Chris Eubank Jr.'s advice to himself should be, I shouldn't be anywhere near this.
This is where that fight is. Conor Benn, Chris Eubank Jr., that fight is always there. So why not allow Conor to clear his name, go and serve his time, whatever happens in that situation, let that happen. That fight could be there in a year's time, in 2 years' time. It's always going to have interest. People always want to see that with a family feud and whatnot.
Do you think we'll see it? Do you think we'll see it in September? Do you think this is a load of noise from Matchroom, or do you think they're actually going to proceed with making a fight?
I can't see how they can proceed, Simon.
Well, they can take it abroad and then everyone can take the consequences of it.
Well, everyone takes the consequences.
Besides them, of course.
Yeah, everyone takes the consequences, and that's a difficult situation for everyone else. Can I see it happening September the 23rd? If I'm totally honest, I'm not sure I can.
Well, I hope it doesn't on a number of fronts. I hope it doesn't, because it puts Chris Eubank Jr. into some sort of state of jeopardy. And I also don't think it's a great fight, because I think it's the wrong fight, but it gets people paid. But there we are. Anyway, look, before we get too obsessed and disappear at our own backsides, and everyone goes, "You're obsessed by this."
Well, it's a talking point, isn't it? And
it is.
And then
it is.
It's resurfaced its head.
Is
all this talking point, by the way, to try and force the hand of UCAD to try and get this process speeded up? I mean, I
think it's bad behaviour. And when you're going to accuse other people of bad behaviour, you need to get your own behaviour in order. Look, we've obviously seen this week yet another false dawn in the heavyweight division, where we're now seeing the anthonyjoshua situation, the so-called fight with Dillian Whyte, falling out of bed. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think I said that a couple of weeks ago, that they weren't going to meet Dillian Whyte's demands financially.
Yeah. I'm not sure that's dead and buried in the water at the moment, but it's very close to being dead and buried in the water.
Where's he going to go?
I just think it's like you hit the nail on the head, Simon. I think it's the demands of Dillian Whyte.
Oh, I'm pretty sure it is,
Yeah, maybe too much. Yeah. Where's he going to go? Great point. Where's he going to go if the Dillian Whyte fight doesn't happen? Because for me, that was the perfect fight for him. Where does he go if that doesn't happen? I mean, you got to look at names like... Because we know this situation that's happening out in Saudi. There's a lot of money.
Well, this is the problem.
From the business point of view.
This is the problem. Everyone thinks they're on Saudi money.
Yeah.
I mean, Dillian Whyte, the numbers that I'm hearing are in significant millions.
Right.
Significant millions, right?
Because he knows the value of it because of this situation that's going on out in Saudi.
But that's Saudi money.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at Dillian Whyte, and to quote Dillian, what's he saying? AJ's team is wasting time and aren't serious.
Yeah.
Where do you put? Do you put? I mean, I don't think that Dillian Whyte is any more a contender. I don't think he is at the top end of the sport anymore. Yeah. But you might make a different case, because you're advancing AJ at the top end of the sport. They've both beaten the same fellow in recent fights. How do they square this particular circle? Because Dillian Whyte's over here demanding us ridiculous amounts of money. Yeah. AJ's looking for a tune-up fight. Are we in danger of having no fights in the Southern heavyweight division besides Usyk versus Dubois?
We are in danger of that, of course. And it's, again, the politics of the sport, the money that's involved, because the fighters that, when we're talking about Anthony Joshua and we're talking about Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk, I mean, he's got his fight with Daniel Dubois out in Poland on the 26th. We don't know what Wilder's doing yet, but he's talking about fighting August, early September as well. But when you're mentioning those names, the opponents are going, I know what you're getting out there, so we want to be well paid for this.
What other options has he got, though, Anthony?
Right, so Anthony Joshua, what other options would I say that he's got?
Because no one seems... You keep bringing Martin McCauley into the conversation.
No, I wouldn't go there.
No one brings him in.
No, because he's too good for his own good. That's a dangerous fight. When you're talking about the pot of gold that's at the end of the rainbow here, which is that for them fights out in Saudi, you've got to go for someone that's a credible name, but someone that's going to be a relatively safe option. So I'm looking at someone like Otto Wallin. Tyson Fury.
Isn't he the one Dillian Whyte dropped out of the way to go and get his shot?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going Otto Wallin. Do I go Luis Ortiz, who was a great fighter back in his day, but he's on the decline now? Yeah, exactly. Luis Ortiz, someone like that. But when you start talking about names like Filip Hrgovic, you can't go there because he's too dangerous. And that could ruin the parties. You can't go with like a Hrgovic or someone of that sort of stature, Frankie Sanchez or someone like that, because they're dangerous guys. So they're limited to a number of names. They're out there. Dillian Whyte and his team will recognise that and say, well, listen, we want our value. We want our work.
But the irony of it is that Daniel Dubois is very dangerous, isn't he?
Absolutely. But that shows you the confidence in Usyk's team.
Usyk's taken the fight.
That shows you the confidence in Usyk's team. See, that tells you where everyone's positioned. Alexander Usyk and his whole team, Alex Krasiev and all them, and Egas, all those guys, they're super confident. They don't care. They go, right, tune-up fight. Well, all right, Daniel Dubois, big guy, heavy-handed, WBA regular champion. Let's take him. Because they're confident, super confident. Alexander Usyk is a great boxer. Like he's a great boxer. He's tough. He's proven against the bigger guys like Anthony-Joshua. So they're willing to take that fight. Shows that they're losing confidence with Anthony-Joshua in that. He's on the rebuilding process. So they've got to get it right, because if Joshua scrapes through and picks himself off the floor against someone, how's that going to set him up for a big fight against Deontay Wilder? Then he's going to be dealing with the demons again. So they've got to get it right, because he's got to try and get some rounds under his belt. And he's also got to try and get the knockout win to install some of that confidence.
But it is just poor, though, isn't it? We can talk about it all day, and we can dress it up, and we can talk about the challenges they've got and who they should and shouldn't fight. But it is poor.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the marquee division. This is the division that everything else blossoms as a result of. And really and truly, it's a bit of a laughing stock now, isn't it?
Look, go back to Ali, Frazer, Larry Holmes, Ken Norton, all them guys.
It's more about who they can avoid. To fight. And, whatever accusations you can make about Mike Tyson and whatever he wasn't, I don't remember him not fighting anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that he ducked it. There was a case that he did actually avoid Evander Holyfield at one point. But the bulk of people that were around,
look, when he beat Trevor Burbick and then Pinkland Thomas and Tyrell Biggs and
Tony Tucker,
and do you know what I mean? Like, all those guys. They were good fighters, but like you say, politics do get involved now, and that's because of the Saudi money.
Well, I don't think it's politics, Spence, it's money. It's just money now.
Yeah.
It's just money.
I believe Anthony Joshua boxes, by the way, August the 12th, but I just don't know who's going to be in the opposite corner. Dillian Whyte would have been prime.
But if it's not credible, it achieves nothing.
No, I agree.
It achieves nothing for the viewing public. It achieves nothing for Anthony. If he goes and knocks over someone that everyone expects him to knock over, I don't really see how that re-establishes any confidence in him.
Sure.
And as much as I thought that Dillian Whyte should have been the first fight for Joshua coming back rather than Franklin, in this instance, they can't even get him in the ring.
Yeah.
And again, it's money, and I suspect it's the polluting influence. And everyone keeps on, in every sport, talking about Middle Eastern money, but it's getting in the way. It's getting in the way.
Yeah. I mean, the likelihood is we could see Joshua versus Wilder, so I think that's a pretty much done deal out there in Saudi Arabia.
Or we could just accept that Joshua's not going to have another fight and go straight and fight Wilder.
That's what I'm talking about. Joshua and Wilder not having any warm-up fights and going straight into it because they can't get
manage people's expectations. Just tell them that you're going to fight in December in Saudi and we'll get on with that. And everyone will have to live with it, and everyone can turn around and say, once a year for the heavyweight division. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Moving on from what is a disappointing situation where we can't seem to pin the tail on the donkey of who's going to fight who besides Usyk and Daniel Dubois in the heavyweight division, and hopefully the heavyweight division will live up to its name and be heavyweight in some of its outcomes sooner rather than later. Let's move on to a heavyweight that was fighting last week at the York Hall. I know you were out there. You were with Jake, weren't you?
Yeah.
Frazer Clarke.
Yeah.
Marius Wach is obviously a name, a recognisable name. He's an older fighter now. I thought he was a bit fleshy from what I saw.
Yeah.
Frazer got the job done, and part of the controversy around Frazer at this moment in time is turning down the mandatory opportunity that he had against Fabio Wardley. But boxer wanting to get more rounds and to get a bit more experience. I saw the fight. I thought Frazer was okay. I think you were a little bit underwhelmed, weren't you?
Yeah, I thought. Listen, I'm just speaking real. I thought it was a lacklustre performance from Frazer Clarke. It was frustrating watching him there because I knew it was about him going out there, making a statement. He knew what he had to do, Simon. He knew that it was a chipping away process, right? Marius Wach is a tough guy, been there, seen it, done it, got the T-shirt. To get him out of there inside the distance, you got to chip away, slowly, systematically break him down. Put your shots together. And what he done, Frazer, was he went out there and he won the fight 100-90, so they scored it every round. I thought actually Marius nicked a couple of rounds, but what he done there was he went out there, he was throwing single shots. Yes, it gets extremely hot in there, so you can, I understand that, but he needs to go out there and make a statement, put his shots together, and that's how he was going to get him out of there. He didn't make that statement, but on the plus side, he got the 10 rounds under his belt, and that will give him the psychological edge that he needed.
Did it tell you anything about Frazer that you didn't know? Because obviously the case has been made, and the arguments abound about what Ben was doing and what Eddie were doing in their various fighting corners about making the fight that people suggested that Frazer wanted and clearly Fabio wanted. Right? But did you see the reasons why Boxer were going, well, hold on, we'll get to that, but we need a couple more fights for our man?
Yeah, because so this is the argument. So everyone's saying, well, Fabio Wardley, he's only been 6 rounds. So what are you talking about? He's only done 6 rounds, but Fabio Wardley's trained for 12 rounds. So I understand the process. Yes, he's only been 6 rounds, and Frazer Clarke had only been 6 rounds before that. They're going, well, what's the argument then? But Frazer Clarke's only trained for 6 rounds. What I'm saying is there's different types of training. When you're training for 12 rounds, you know, the endurance is a lot different. You know, the amount of rounds that you're sparring, the distance on your runs, the sprints, everything is different.
It's tailored differently.
It's tailored differently. So Boxer and Frazer Clarke are going, no, let me do it on my terms. Let me get, like, I've trained for a 10 rounder now. Yeah. Now he's done it. He feels like he's ready. People going, you can't just have one 10 rounder and then go, you're ready. You go, yeah, but he's now trained for that. Yeah. So he feels now that mentally he's in a better place.
Do you think what Eddie has said, which is, well, good job we didn't take this Wardley fight because he would have been outclassed based on what I saw. Well, is that true, or is it just a case of styles make fights?
Well, listen, on that performance is going to give Wardley and his team a lot of confidence going into there, and rightly so, because I didn't see anything there that would worry any heavyweight out there at that sort of level. You know, you're going out there and you go, right, you make a statement, but, you know, it was... Like I said, I thought it was a lacklustre performance. I think Frazer would admit that himself.
Have you spoken to Frazer since?
No, I've not spoken to him since then. I was trying to get him on actually for a podcast, but he's gone away. He went away with his family, so, and rightly so. He just had some time to come down and whatnot. But listen, the way that Frazer will look at this now is he'll look at it and go, well, that's good, because that's going to, you know, other opponents are going to say, yeah, I fancy a bit of him. And that will get him the work that he needs.
That wasn't the plan, though, was it?
No, it wasn't the plan. It wasn't the plan at all. The plan was to go out there and make a statement. Yeah. And it didn't happen. Yeah. That's the truth of it. You know, I thought that, you know, there was times there where I was getting frustrated. I was sitting there and watching it going, come on, Frazer, step it up now, mate. Go through the levels. Go through the gears. Yeah. You know, like, go... Like, you know.
It's a bit like Josh Boatsy the other day, isn't it?
Exactly the same. Yeah. Exactly the same.
Come on now, make a statement. Step through the gears. Yeah, come on. Step it up, step it up.
Because you know it's there. And you know it's there. And that's the frustrating thing. You think, come on, mate, open the locker. Go through the gears.
What do you think is next for Frazer?
What is next for Frazer? So now I saw he was calling out Fabio Wardley. Actually, I think for Frazer now he'd get another 10 rounder under his belt. Maybe look at a WBC international title, something like that, like one of those sort of titles.
Prior to fighting for the British.
Well, no, go for the British definitely. But I think that like maybe he needs another fight at that sort of level before going for that.
Right.
You know, I mean, he may feel that he's ready for that now that he's got that 10 round under his belt. I just think, listen. Look, you've had 7 fights, mate. You know, like, go for another one. Get some more experience under your belt. Try and right the wrongs of the last fight. You know, this is constructive criticism. Take that away and try and implement that into what you're doing, because that's what he needs to do. He's got to listen to everybody around him. And I'll have that conversation with him as well and say, listen, mate, that's great. What did we take from it? You got 10 rounds under your belt. You know you can do it in extreme conditions. It was unbelievably hot in there. So you know you can get that, which means you know you can do the 12-round distance because you wasn't gassing. You know, you done all right. You was plugging away. But what do we need to work on? You know, acceleration, going through the gears. You know, phase 1, phase 2.
Did you see anything? Did Wach cause him any problems?
Wach didn't cause him any problems, but it was a competitive fight.
Yeah.
That was for sure. It was a competitive fight. I mean, Frazer was winning the rounds, but Wach was making him work for it. And I think for me, I was looking at it going, come on, Frazer, like, put a combination together.
Step it up.
Step it up. You know what I mean? I know Wach's got experience and he makes things awkward and he's big and he's using his weight and he's very clever. The geezer's 43, mate. Like, he's been around for a long time. Like, step it up, break his heart, steal his soul.
Make a statement.
Steal his soul, because that's what you do with them fighters. Otherwise, if they can hang in there, they'll hang in there, and that's what Wach done. So, yeah.
Well, hopefully better for Frazer next time out, and ultimately, if we can see Frazer versus Fabio Wardley, if you were making that fight once Frazer's acclimatised himself to a few 10-round fights, who would you pick out of Frazer, Clarke, and Fabio Wardley?
It's a 50 fight.
Pick and fight.
Yeah, it's a pick and fight. I mean, I tell you what I need to see from Frazer, which I haven't seen yet, and that was a frustration. Sobolowski, we saw it with Frazer when he went in with another experienced guy and went to 6 rounds. I go, I'm just watching it, and if I shut my eyes, I can hear dum, 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 dum. It's just one pace. I go, mate, you need to go through the gears, right? So he even said it in his interview afterwards, you know, I recognise that I need to step up. Well, if you recognise it, implement it into your style. Yeah. Otherwise, you're going to fall into that category of the guy that knows what he's got to do, but just hasn't got the ability to do it. So now he's got to go out there and prove to us that he can do it. He's got the rounds under his belt. So if he does that and shows me that he can go through the gears, then you're going to go, well, now Frazer's got a real shot here.
Yep.
But, you know, at the moment, like, you know, I saw an interview with Eddie and they said, listen, we're not worried about that now. Fabio Wardley will be rubbing his hands together. Well, you know, rightly so, maybe.
One more fight, then we'll have him in then, won't we?
Absolutely.
On that basis, Another situation going on inside boxing, which is probably a little bit unpalatable as well, but the reality of the world that we live in, which is the dispute that's been brewing between Ryan Garcia and Oscar De La Hoya. And I can't quite get my head around this, that there's an issue that Ryan Garcia wants out of his contract because he doesn't feel loved.
Yes.
Which is basically...
That's basically where it is. That's in a nutshell.
Basically, I don't feel loved. You told me to man up after the fight against Tank. And
what happened was...
And now Oscar De La Hoya's gone, yeah, that's fine. I did tell you to man up. Get on with it. And by the way, you got a contract, so get on with that too.
Yeah. So what happened was, so that people understand this a little bit, so after the fight had materialised, and it was one of the highest grossing box office fights, pay-per-view fights in recent times. So, Golden Boy's done a good job with Ryan Garcia, building him up, to where he's got to. And I think what's happened with Ryan Garcia is that Golden Boy, Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy Promotions, none of them turned up to the post-fight interview afterwards. So he felt unloved, right? So he's at a fragile time there, right? But like Oscar said...
It's a little bit of fair observation as well.
Yeah,
they should be there because they'll be there for the good times.
Someone's got to be there. You've got to be there to pick your fight.
Why do you think that was, by the way? Do you think... Because when I spoke to Carl Froch, his attitude towards Ryan Garcia was, get up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You've got to get up.
That's my attitude.
You swallowed it.
That's my attitude.
Right? So is that what's being sent, the message to him by his promotion team, which is basically... We're giving you a swerve because you swallowed the fight.
No, because I think they've gone to court now, and Oscar De La Hoya is saying, "Listen, we want you to fulfil your contracts. We want you to."
Well, he would do commercially because
it's commercially. That's what I'm saying.
But what I'm saying is I'm debating the vagary and peculiarity of it by saying, is it Golden Boy saying to Garcia, "You swallowed that fight, so we ain't going to turn up to a press conference to condone that"? By the way,
Well,
do you think that's what it is?
Well, look. When you break it down like that and you go, and you look at it, you go, well, that's a good possibility because, I don't see it like that. They may have been tied up doing other stuff. But
they wouldn't have been tied up if
why
it won,
would
though,
your
would they?
promotional team
They wouldn't have been
and
tied
the
up if it won.
promoter? No, they wouldn't. They would have all been there, the whole team, the seconds and everyone. So why would he be left to go there on his own? I can understand both sides of the argument here, but I just can't understand why Golden Boy Promotions, Oscar De La Hoya, the whole team, not one of them would turn up to the post-fight.
Because this is a relationship.
On a massive fight.
But this is a relationship that goes back a long way.
Yeah.
Oscar De La Hoya was very much involved at a very early stage. He hasn't just Johnny come lately, rocked up and taken him. He's had him for quite some time now.
A number of years,
and been involved with him and probably been supportive of him when Ryan Garcia had some mental health issues of his own. So all of a sudden, you've got this dispute. And you've got this dispute on the back of Ryan Garcia's loss. And I don't think it's a good look for either one of them, quite frankly.
No, I
think Garcia saying I needed someone to come and wipe my bum and put their arm around my shoulders. And Oscar De La Hoya turning around and going, just do one and get lost at this moment in time. I don't think it's a particularly good look on either one of them, do you?
No, I don't. That's what I'm saying. I can see both sides of the argument. Understand where Ryan was, that fragile state that you're in after the post-fight. It's a fight of that magnitude. He needs to grow up a little bit, doesn't he? But he needs to grow up a little bit. Come on, all right. Look, no one was there. Have that conversation away from it. Sit down with Oscar.
It's gone past that now, isn't it?
And have the chat. But
so where do you think this ends up? I think it probably ends up in passing the ways, doesn't it?
Well, they're in court now. So where does it end up? It's going to cost both of them a lot of money, which is stupid because I believe that it could have been sorted out outside of that. But what is it going to do? It's going to fracture the relationship. It's got to.
Yeah,
it's got to.
You can't imagine that. I can't imagine Oscar De La Hoya is going to lose this particular battle.
No.
But the reality of it is, he's going to have an unhappy fighter with him, which means someone's going to have to come and buy him out of his contract, aren't they?
Absolutely, and
take him on their own little merry journey.
Yeah.
But going back to Garcia, I do think we saw something in the fight against Tank Davis that possibly doesn't suggest that he's going to go on to where the levels we may have thought he would have gone once.
When I saw him against the likes of Luke Campbell and I see him pick himself off the floor after that good left hook that Luke Campbell hit him with, and I saw the way that he finished Campbell, I thought, you know what, this kid's got something. And he's still growing, he's still developing, he's going to be good. What I saw there against Tank Davis, and I'm with Cole Froch on this one, I saw the body shot go in, delayed reaction, all right, listen, I've seen people like Diego Corrales rolling around on the floor screaming, jumping up 3 or 4 times through fights and getting there. I'm not saying that you've got to be as mentally strong as that, but when I was looking at Ryan Garcia and he's on the knee and he's watching the count and you're looking and you're going, come on then, he's on 7 now, get up mate. He's on 8 now, no, it's time to get up mate. And then he waited for 10 and then rose and walked off to the corner. I go, there was fight left in you there.
Yeah.
There was fight left in you. And that's alarming moving forward because he's at that level now.
That's right.
Look at the people that he's in that weight division, like Kambosos, Devin Haney, Lomachenko, all those guys, Tank Davis, Shakur Stevenson. There's loads of names there and he's in that mix. And after that performance, they're all going to go,
we'll have some of that.
let's have some of that.
And that's why Oscar De La Hoya won't let him have his contract, because he's going to get paid a lot of money as a result of it. But look, these are the things that go on, I suspect, in modern day sport. That's it for this week's edition of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. As always, keep liking the videos, keep subscribing to the channel, keep sending questions in. And myself and Spencer, we'll see you next week.